Competition to make Australia's cheapest electric vehicle is heating up.
This is the BYD Dolphin, an electric hatchback from China.
The stats for 2023 are in, and EVs are going gangbusters in Australia, with our biggest year on record for EV sales. Our percentage of new cars sold was around 7% for fully electric, double what it was last year. And there is something very interesting happening right now in our light vehicle sector overall. Seemingly overnight, China has become an automotive behemoth and is now number 3 exporter of cars to Australia, behind Japan and Thailand. And in this episode, I'm going to explore why we are seeing so many arrive on our shores, what has made them so appealing to Australian consumers, what else is coming, and could Australia ever see the day where we start up EV manufacturing ourselves?
Like Fully Charged? You'll love our fun-packed everything electric expos around the world. Next up, Australia and London. Remember, energy and transport professionals go free on the first day.
It's now apparent that Chinese EVs are shaping the landscape of Australia's electric vehicle transition. Take, for example, the runaway success of BYD, which only entered into our market around 18 months ago and has already reached the top 3 of EV sales. When we look at the Australian top 10 EV sales list for 2023, we see BYDs, Teslas, MGs, Polestars and Volvos, which are all built in China. And in addition to those in the top 10, we also see very decent EVs from Chinese brands GWM and LDV. On my quest to understand the unprecedented domination of Chinese-made vehicles in the Australian EV space, I had a chat with some of my connections in the know.
It's really down to 2 main things. The first piece being what's happening in China and Chinese manufacturing and the sort of products that they're creating here. And then the second part, which is what has been happening in Australia and the nature of our vehicle market. So I think the 2 of those in combination, I mean, just what's been happening in China by itself is a really huge presence already, but the 2 of those in combination really has put us in a perfect storm of events to allow for a new entrant. And in this case, that being an entire country's manufacturing base, but also the brands that are, coming out of China, whether it's, as you mentioned, brands from overseas manufacturing there, being able to reduce costs, increase their scale, being closer to Australia, so being able to ship to Australia from there. And what is it that Chinese brands are doing? They're bringing in superior products that are the latest generation of technology or products, very good, very high quality products at much lower prices than their competition.
So where did this all begin? How did China become an EV superpower? To answer this question, I spoke to our Fully Charged show correspondent in China, the very knowledgeable Elliot.
I remember discussing this previously with Robert, and what happened was Thatcher and Reagan, they offshored everything, all production overseas, because they wanted a service economy, move away from a manufacturing economy. And basically, from that point onwards, whilst the West has made huge amounts of profit, we've lost skills and knowledge in building things, and so China's obviously taken that up in a huge way. Everything's made there. But the biggest shift happened in 2015 with the Made in China 2025 policy. So they thought, well, we're not going to ever compete with internal combustion engines. We're 100 years behind the West with that technology. So let's go to EVs. It's a new industry. Maybe we can become experts in that. And basically from that point is the whole focus from China, and the industry in China has been on growing EVs. And they've been so vertically integrated now that, everything is just made domestically, from the batteries to LEDs to chips. It's all made here. So keeping it within China makes it very competitive and really drives down the price.
So low cost is one appeal, but that can't be the whole story. What makes the Chinese-made EVs stand out from the crowd? And particularly, what features have allowed them to leapfrog the EVs from the legacy automakers and storm to the top of the sales charts here and around the world?
Traditional legacy automakers, they're much more about the driving experience and how it makes you feel. The Chinese cars are much more around the technology, how it can benefit your life in terms of, it will park the car for you. It will, do a lot of auto driving. You can talk to the car and it will open your boot or close the door or turn on your air conditioning without having to use your hands. So it's much more integrated into your life and your family life. It's not so much about the driver, it's about everyone's experience in the cabin. And then they're doing that at a much cheaper price point, which then obviously helps with sales and adoption.
The tech coming out of China's EVs is very impressive. In fact, extremely impressive. And perhaps that's the best word, extreme. Sometimes it can feel a little too smart. We're talking features like voice commands, fatigue detection, self-driving capability, and sometimes intrusive commentary from the car along your journey. But you've got to love the battery tech, as seen with BYD's Blade battery, offering increased efficiency and safety.
I do think there's maybe a little bit too much technology, too screen-oriented in China, and I think they have to find that balance with a more, Western audience.
So I guess that was sort of another question I had about the subtle differences between Chinese manufactured EVs and Chinese owned EVs. Are they the kind of differences that you're talking about, just in terms of the tech?
Yeah, so if I look at so you say Chinese owned EVs, so that would be like the Polestar. If you look at Polestar in China, they haven't sold very well at all. In fact, I think you can safely say they've been a sales disaster. There's barely any on the roads because they're seen as too European. And I think the Chinese produced cars, they just offer another level of luxury, and refinement, in terms of materials, the drive, that perhaps a legacy automaker just can't quite get at that same price point. I look at someone like, Mercedes. They make electric Mercedes in China. They're very good, but they're extremely expensive, whereas a domestically made EV can do this exactly the same with probably better technology, better updates for about a third of the price. And it just shows you how little brand loyalty lasts. People pivot very, very easily and very quickly if they don't offer what they want.
Loyalty schmoyalty. We Aussies love a bargain, and more than that, we hate being overlooked or even ripped off. So let that be a warning, legacy automakers. When we aren't prioritised as a market, we will welcome brands that do see us as important, and they will reap the hefty rewards. A brand that has seen incredible success here in Australia is BYD. Entering the market at around $48,000, this Atto 3 is now the third top-selling EV for 2023, behind the Tesla Model Y and Model 3. And in December, it was joined in the top 10 list by its sleek siblings, the Dolphin and the Seal. In 2023, BYD sold almost 1.6 million EVs, and in Q4, overtook Tesla to become the biggest supplier of EVs to the world. The low cost and availability of these Chinese-made EVs have been a game changer for EV uptake in Australia. For a while now, we've been pretty limited as to the number of models that we've had available to purchase, and the reason is supply. So while Australia continues to lack strong fuel efficiency standards for new vehicles, automakers prioritise other markets, sending their clean vehicles over to other parts of the world that do have these standards in place, leaving us with the crumbs, which is insufficient numbers of EVs to meet demand and a whole lot of petrol and diesel models to boot. Which has led me to speculate just how much is having these Chinese EV models available here speeding up Australia's EV transition?
It's been absolutely seismic to date, but also importantly in terms of where we're going from here as well. So as cheaper, I should say more affordable, because they're not cheaper, they're still very premium products that are much more affordable come out of China, that also starts setting the prices for a lot of other products. So quite often, the car that you're buying from another brands, that price gets set against its competitors. And when you start to see, well, at certain products that can do 450 kilometers in range, has all of the 5-star safety rating, has all of the features that you would expect, comes in at $39,000. It makes it much harder for somebody to try to bring that product in at $70,000, for instance, right? And I can sort of think of a couple of brands who have bought in products at around a $70,000 price range, and you look at that and go, how on earth can you justify thinking this is a $70,000 product? In the past, that's been because of a lack of competition. That's absolutely gone away now. That competition is quite fierce, and you have to bring things in they have to be good products, and you have to bring them in at quite competitive prices.
As Australia's EV demand soars, having a choice of different models to meet our individual needs is going to be necessary to keep that momentum going. So I want to know what's coming next to Australia.
So I think for an indication of what is likely to come in the next 18 months to 2 years, look at the market in Thailand. So that's a good indication of, what you will get next. In terms of brands which I think should do well and should come to Australia. So the first one, you said pickups and utes. So one is Radar. We drove a Radar, I think late last year, and they're from Geely, and that's their pickup brand. It's very practical. It was inexpensive. It had decent range, good technology, and I think it would do very well. And another one which I think is probably quite important is a car with 800-volt architecture, and a car which appeals to the kind of Holden Ford crowd. One that's coming is the GAC. They've got the Ion brand, and they've got loads of really cool cars, but they've got extreme fast charging with the 800-volt architecture. They've got really good looking, cool, fast cars. I think they're likely to come next year, and I think they'll also disrupt the market in a big way.
Elliot's predictions may just be spot on. Word on the street, totally unconfirmed of course, is that over the next 12 months there may be the emergence of brands Aeon, Zeekr and Chery in the EV space. Radar and Neo have also made moves to launch here, but it seems that some pesky trademark issues are slowing things down. So watch this space. So often I'll watch one of Elliot's reviews and wonder, will we ever get that here? So I wanted to find out what factors limit the brands that enter into our market.
Australia does have some specific design rules. So, for instance, it's easier to decide to expand to New Zealand because in New Zealand you can homologate your vehicles, for instance, to the UK, or I think other places in Europe as well, to the UK for your right-hand drive products, and then just meet that certification to be able to sell cars in New Zealand. Whereas in Australia, you have to build to an Australian standard.
Obviously, brand and perception of Chinese cars is a huge barrier. It's like, oh, it's Chinese. It's obviously not very well made. It's probably going to fall apart. Is there service and support there if it does go wrong? I think the biggest barrier to entry is always going to be political or geopolitical. So, all you need is some politician to say, we don't want this in our country, and then they put tariffs or taxes or, make it really difficult for these EVs to come into the market.
So I think I may have cracked the code to China's incredible success in Australia's EV market. These companies are offering amazing tech, practicality. Their proximity to us has led to increased availability of models and, of course, affordability. And they're offering this at a time when the brands we had long been loyal to have either been too busy servicing other markets or, in some cases, just resting on their laurels. China's success in the EV space is certainly accelerating Australia's transition to a cleaner transport sector. But I can't help but shed a tear for the good old days when Australia manufactured its own cars, our beloved Holdens and Fords. At one point, we were the 10th largest car maker in the world, producing 500,000 cars a year in the 70s. Surely we could blow the cobwebs off the old manufacturing plants and start to put our rich supply of natural resources to good use and perhaps become an EV powerhouse ourselves.
What's really important, and is just as true for batteries, just much more so for cars, is that it's not just do we have the capabilities to. The answer is, if it's purely based on a capability and opportunity, the answer is absolutely yes. The thing is that this is a competitive field. If the Prime Minister was traveling around the world saying this is number one on our list of what we want, well, so is the President of Indonesia, and and so is the head of state in Malaysia and in Thailand. So that is a level of ambition that we need to show just to be competitive, and we're not showing that level of ambition. So I think that's the only thing that's holding us back from being, having a real chance within that area.
Wherever an EV is made, we want it to be efficient, safe, comfortable, affordable, and with great tech. And with components from all around the globe, can we really accurately say that an EV is from a particular place anymore?
We passed the point of no return. We're not going to go back to a world where China's not part of the supply chain. I think it's too intertwined, and it's, you know, we've done this to ourselves. We've, you know, shifted all the expertise and the manufacturing knowledge to China. So there'll always be, you know, Chinese parts in whatever we use, phones, computers, cars. And I think what we're really going to see is a bit of muddying of the waters. So what's defined as Chinese now might be a bit more difficult in the coming years. So Polestar is a good example. It's kind of marketed as a Swedish brand. It's kind of Swedish, but it's definitely made in China, also made in America. And it kind of gets a bit complicated. It's a global product. It's too hard to pigeonhole into it's Chinese, or, you know, it's you know, Western or whatever. So
No matter what, Chinese-built EVs are here to stay, and I say we are absolutely the better for it. The affordability, the accessibility, the innovative tech, and the fact that these companies see Australia as a worthy market make them a very welcome presence on our roads. It will be interesting to see how the legacy automakers respond over time. But I say the more players in this game, the better. Get us better and better technology, let competition drive the prices right down, and let's all work together on a global scale to electrify faster and better.